Well, good afternoon to you all. Thank you very much for coming to this seminar called Justice Flows Down Like a River. And my name is Raj Bharat Patta, and I currently work as a presbyter at United Stockport Circuit in Manchester and Stockport District. So it is such a joy and delight for me to be part of the Cliff Festival, my second time. Last year I was doing the festival online and then was speaking online, but this year I'm glad I'm able to do the hybrid version, some online, some in person. And the theme, as you can see, is about justice flowing down like river. So it will be an interactive session where we will together do some things and together see how best can we understand what does it mean when I say justice flows down like river. Because I am a local minister in a church, I'm used to doing things like cafe worships and things like that. And I hope you don't mind me starting and doing things like that. So there are some slides which I want you to come on my first slide. I'm sure, can you recognize this picture? No? Titanic, brilliant. So as you can see, RMS Titanic was a British passenger ship, and in 1912, what has happened, and so many things happened with this incident, you know, the film, the people talking about it. So just to bring you into context on rivers, I begin with it. But on my next thing, I want to ask you a few riddles, and I'm sure you should be smart to answer these ones. Where do the boats with coronavirus go to get healthy, you think? We are on rivers. Where do you think the boats with coronavirus go to get healthy? No? On my next slide, the answer is the dock. Yes. Good. I did tell you I'm a minister engaging with local children, people and congregations, so I keep doing. So on my next one, Captain Ali is the captain of the ship. The captain of the ship is Captain Ali. What is the name of the ship? Guess the name of the ship. The ship. What is the name? You know, what? Yes, without a question tag. Good one. The other one, when you need me, you throw me away, but when you are done with me, you bring me back. I am? The anchor. Yes, you can see it there. The anchor. My next slide. On a fine sunny day, a ship was in the harbor, and all of a sudden the ship began to sink. There was no storm and nothing wrong with the ship, yet it sank right in the front of the spectator's eyes. What caused the ship to sink? The rising water. My next slide. It is a submarine, yes. Yes. This one you should definitely get it. On my next one. Why is a ferry boat like a good rule? We are on rivers. Justice flows down like rivers. Why is a ferry boat like a good rule? The answer is because it works both ways. And then, which ship has two mates but no captain? You know it. Friendship. And then, as you know, when is the earliest record of using the waterborne vessels mentioned in history? Who made the first sailing boats? It was around 4000 BCE. The Egyptians need boats and had a mast and sails and were used on the river Nile. So boats began 4000 years BCE and then they continued moving on. On the next slide, you can see the progression of the ships and the boats on the rivers, like 1000 AD Vikings, and then 1100 AD the Chinese junks, 3 and 4 masted sailing ships. 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed in the caravels, and 1800s, the clipper ships. So there is a progression in terms of how the journey on the waters continued. But I want you to watch the next slide. And does that remind you something? The slave ships were large cargo ships, especially built or converted from the 17th and 19th century transporting slaves. As many as 20 million people from Africa were transported in this. So when we are thinking about justice, you see the broad spectrum of life. On one hand, it has helped people to transport, but on the other hand, there is this grave injustice of slave trade that went on the waters. So we also know in the British modern history, 1942, the Windrush generation came to this country, and still justice has been denied to so many people from this generation. And moving on, so migration, boats and migration. Today, there are about 14 million people are thought to have fled homes from Russia. 6 million have left to neighboring countries. And there is so much of migration that is happening across. You're with me? So that brings me to my question, how do we celebrate migrants today in the UK? When has migrants become a dirty word? Today migrants make up 18% of the UK workforce. It has brought so much of technology advancement, and there is so much multiculturalism that we celebrate, from musicians to sports people. And every day when you are getting on a bus, you might see a migrant whom you would have never seen. So the 21st century British public sphere has totally changed. And we live in it today, a different world where we are called to celebrate. Unfortunately, migration became a dirty word, but I think we need to change the rhetoric in terms of understanding how can we celebrate the gifts that people bring and people take and give and take in that process. So on my next slide, you can see the kind of migration that we celebrate, from chicken tikka masala to the NHS, doctors and nurses, to sports, to IT, technology, music, arts. There is so much that is being celebrated across the world by this process of giving and taking. But unfortunately, as I said, today there is a grave injustice done on people who do not look like us, who do not believe like us, and who do not belong where we belong. So in such a context, how do we understand what is justice, and what does justice flowing like a river means for all of us? So I was thinking about this story called Lydia. I'm sure you know this Lydia. Lydia happens to be the first European convert. And she, when Paul and Silas came to Philippi, you know about Lydia? She was this businesswoman selling purple. Maybe in today's times, it is like the Gucci or the Rolex. So she's a powerful businesswoman. And the first migrant from Asia Minor went on to live in Philippi, made a business group, but the way she received Paul and Silas as her hospitality is something that engages us, helps us to understand what justice. And on that, if you read this passage, when you go back, when Paul and Silas had a dream, and in the dream, a man comes and says, please go to Philippi. And when they went to Philippi, it was a man who came in the dream, but they meet a woman. Yeah, you want to see these three images that I am showing here. The first one, can you go back? The first one, during the night, Paul had a vision, and there stood a man of Macedonia pleading with him and saying, come over to Macedonia and help us. You see Paul there, lying, and the man who appeared in the dream standing. On the next slide, and when Paul came to Philippi, can you identify Paul and Lydia in this picture? So Paul is the one who is slightly on a raised mount, and Lydia is seated in the grass with her friends. So what does this tell us about their relationship? You want to see a contrast? You want to go to the previous slide once again? You see the man, where you see the dynamic there? Paul receiving the vision from a man, but when they went to Philippi, they saw a woman, and now Paul, on an elevated position, and Lydia listening from her. And on the next slide, you see Paul and Lydia becoming co-partners in the kingdom of God. You see the transition? So all I'm trying to say, when I've spoken about Lydia and thinking about it, I see Lydia to be a person who is a migrant woman. If you read the passage in the Bible, it says she's come from a place called Thyatira, but made her business in a place called Philippi due to economic reasons or whatever reasons. And then when Paul and Silas were looking for a synagogue, they went to a riverside where Lydia was sitting and talking with other women, and then Paul and Silas come and speak to them. So what do we celebrate about Lydia, the woman who sells the purple in this place? I was thinking maybe Lydia is the first European convert who was instrumental for the church in Philippi. It began in a house church, became a huge Philippi church where Paul again writes a letter to them. And from then on, Christianity in Europe spread about. Lydia was an Asian migrant who moved to the port city of Philippi for business. And she wields autonomy, agency, and advocacy for Jesus' movement. In those times, when women did not have any preference or priority, she resisted all forms of patriarchy and yet engaged in listening to the words that Paul and Silas spoke. She's a successful businesswoman, a leader of a household. And although the Messiah went looking for a man in Macedonia, it was good they found a woman called Lydia. So if justice has to flow down like a river, and on the next one I just keep telling, Lydia happens to be for me the migrant Christian in Philippi who has offered so much, about hospitality and things like that. But I was thinking, can you go back to the previous slide, please? I was thinking if Lydia is a migrant woman from Thyatira who went and made business in Philippi, of all the things that when she has heard the gospel that was preached by Paul and Silas, she asked Paul and Silas to come and stay in her home. Why do you think she picked hospitality as a marker for Christian discipleship? There were other passages where she could have said, I will go home and tell this gospel to other people. Why do you think she picked hospitality as her immediate response to what she has heard from the gospel? Maybe she wanted to hear more, therefore she invited Paul and Silas to her home. Maybe that's how she understood what Jesus is about. Jesus has ministries more about hospitality, and therefore she was inspired to continue it. Personally, as I was reading it from my migrant eyes, I see because she was from a place called Thyatira, went and made a living in a place called Philippi, and when she moved as a migrant, she knew the importance of housing and how she faced those strange looks from people around in that new city. And as soon as Paul and Silas, two strangers that came to Philippi, she thought they should not undergo what I have went through, and therefore she said, please come and stay in my home. She even persuaded. If you read the cause in the text, she just did not throw an invitation like that. She persuaded, she made sure that they come and stay with her. So I feel as a migrant woman, Lydia knew the importance of hospitality and housing, for she knew the struggles being a migrant herself. And as a migrant, as a woman, as a worshipper of God, she knew hospitality is the mark of Christian discipleship. And welcome and hospitality is the essence of the gospel of Jesus Christ. So all I'm trying to say, in this journey of how we understand justice as flowing like a river, we live in a world where we take many things for granted. Again, with the rise of fear of stranger that we have these days. So how do we understand gospel in such a time like this? And I personally feel justice is the evangelism that the world today needs. And our evangelism should be all about justice, because unless we show justice to the people around us, whatever we do is not able to relate, or we are not translating the faith in Jesus Christ relevantly for our times today. So on my next slide, you can see in the context of growing xenophobia, which is fear of stranger, loving, welcoming, and hospitality is the gospel today. Again, I was asking the question, what is the relationship of British Christianity with the migrant fellowships that are around? You look into your own towns, there are hundreds of migrant Christian groups that are meeting in their own pockets. Are they part of the British Christianity? Because in Manchester where we live, there are about 10 Indian groups that I know, each meeting in their own specific local language groups, which is fine. I understand that is an opportunity. Are they part of the wider British Christian ethos? If so, how do we make that conscious integration with people around us? So these are some questions that I keep thinking and talking about. And when we talk about migration, again, unfortunately, the government now has picked this testing of asylum people in Rwanda, which for me is very inhuman and unchristian. If crucifixion after crucifixion, I believe there is a resurrection. It is not from one crucifixion to another crucifixion. They're already fleeing away from war and violence and coming, seeking a sanctuary, and we want to deport them and test and try them in a different country where human rights abuses are on high. And there is so much going on. So how do we understand justice as evangelism in such a time? And I think one of the ways that we can really make a difference is by saying hospitality is one way of our hearts strangely warming today. And celebrating, again, as I said, immigration, migration has become a dirty word. Maybe as churches, as followers of Jesus Christ, we need to say we are for a multicultural society. We want to affirm and celebrate everyone's gifts. And unless we change that rhetoric, justice will not flow like an ever-flowing stream. It will only be a theory that we are speaking. But I think the call is, how can we think and show this hospitality in terms of for our times today in which we live today? And on my next slide, I was just thinking we are called to practice hospitality as a sign of our baptism. That is what justice is all about. And in my own place, where we have a Stockport refugee network, it has been quite a moving experience for me to be with them. There are about 300 people who were dumped in a hotel. They can't work. They don't know English. I'm not really sure how many of us as a church really went and spoke to them. It really changes and challenges our faith. And I think it is important for us to come out of our own cocoons, go into the world and talk to people, and only then gospel will become more relevant. And for which I feel justice should be at the heart of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And moving on, I have shown this. Have you seen this picture before? On the first one is a reality where the rich and the richer have so many big tables to stand on. And there are some other people who are the middle class with one table. And there are the poor who do not have anything to stand on. How will they watch the match? But that is the reality. If you want to talk about equality, they say, let us put everyone on an equal table, on equal footing. Maybe we are to that extent. We say, let us bring everybody, but which is not possible because of so many inequalities that go on. And the third one is about the equity, where we say, okay, the tallest guy will give his table or the one where he's standing and put the other on, give two things to stand for the one who is not really tall. But I mean, the last one is where I think we are called as a church to remove the wall so that everyone can watch the match and enjoy it. So where are we as a church? If justice has to flow down like a ever-flowing stream, I think our call is to remove the barrier. Maybe if we have to place ourselves here, we might tend to come to the second one, at best. But we say this is not, gospel is about going to heaven, so I really don't care whatever happens here. So maybe this image should challenge us to help us to think, how do we understand the gospel for our times today? Maybe Jesus' coming is to break down the walls and to celebrate the gift of life, allowing everyone to have this new life that we have in Jesus Christ. On my next slide and the next slide, because I can't think of the questions, but if we move on, if Lydia, I'm just thinking, if Lydia was with us today, what would she do? Lydia, a migrant woman who is selling Rolex watches or a Gucci fashion designs, what do you think she would do? Okay, she made sure that everyone is paid fairly in the supply chain, because we have so much on the fair trade. When you do the example there, you see the middleman making so much money, not the farmer or, so fair wages for everyone in the supply chain. She might not want to sell on the internet. Yeah, again, fairly and justly. And what action plan do you think can we think about from the story of Lydia? On a riverside, Paul and Silas met Lydia, and she responded by saying, "Come and stay with me." 60,000 Ukrainians now live in the UK, seeking a home and a sanctuary. And I think there is a bigger call for us. How do we house and home them? Leave apart people from Afghanistan, Syria. There is a community sponsorship scheme. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with it. As a community, you can apply through the Home Office, and through the United Nations refugee scheme, a family will be brought and will stay with you so that you can integrate with them. There are several churches which are on that front trying to say, yes, we want to support just housing and hospitality. There are many examples that are around us. And I think as a church, we are called to take up such things in moving forward. And as we move on to my next slide, I was just thinking about this Jubilee. Jubilee is a good word. Today everyone's using it, this weekend particularly. But as followers of Jesus Christ, it is deeply ingrained for our Christian faith. Jubilee is a word, when I was serving a church and we were celebrating a silver jubilee, I had to name my son Jubilee because of the biblical understanding of Jubilee in Leviticus 25. Jubilee is all about justice and liberation. And I'm not sure how are we celebrating Jubilee. We celebrate, but how are we celebrating? And for me, Jubilee is the word that really determines and calls and says it is grounded in justice and liberation. You read Leviticus 25. It is about after 7 years or 7 years of 7 years, you need to make the debts free. You see on my next slide today, I gather there are about, how do we level up? And for me, a true Jubilee weekend can be, there are about 16 billion pounds of debts on people living within the UK. You call it through council tax, energy bills, overdrafts. There is about 16 billion pounds which is about the debts on the ground, on the government. So for me, a real Jubilee will be to write them off. And it is a big ask, but there is no harm in dreaming big and challenging and asking, this is what I think Jubilee is all about. So maybe this weekend, as we think about the Jubilee, the theme, and particularly justice, let us think about people who are struggling with debts. Globally, again, it is a big thing. I'm just talking about within the country. Globally, again, it is a huge, huge trap. In such a context, for me, Jubilee is all about justice and liberation, and one way is thinking about writing off the debts. But also talking about the context in the UK, on my next slide, I would say there is the context of growing hunger. Hunger is so real around us. It is reported that there are about 8.4 million people who are struggling to afford to eat. 4.7 million of these people live in severe food insecure homes. And where is the gospel of Jesus Christ in such a context? When hunger and poverty is so rife, so much present around us, how do we talk and speak about the gospel of Jesus Christ? And in such a context, recently I have written a paper called A British Public Liberation Theology, where I'm arguing for an anti-hunger faith theological response by asking, are food banks a solution to the hunger? We are so happy by collecting the cans and the tins Sunday after Sunday in the church, which is good. But are they the solution? Maybe we need to see that food banks will end where everybody can eat sufficiently and with whatever we have. Food banks today are projects of neoliberalizing things. And then, how do we understand Eucharist in such a context? What is the Holy Communion? When there is hunger around us, we eat that element of the body of Jesus Christ, and we are called to go and share our resources like Jesus Christ. Where is that sense of hunger and poverty when we really make the Eucharist? What is holy about the Holy Communion? And I think the holiness is in that sharing, in that being and becoming like a broken bread like Jesus Christ into the world around us. If we can do that, I think our faith and justice can flow smoothly in a time like this. And on the next slide, I also see there is a rising xenophobia, fear of the stranger. If you don't look like all of us, we have some prejudice already taking on. So how do we understand, how do we see people whose color is different, though they are different language they speak, but how do we try to integrate and say, yes, hospitality and friendliness is part of our justice mission? And on the third slide, I say in the growing racial discrimination as well. They say all lives matter. Why do we say all lives matter? Black lives matter. Because all lives, black lives do not matter, they say, why don't you say all lives matter? But in the way, when they say black lives matter, we are trying to say black lives do not matter. Therefore, it is important that we speak out. When I was writing my own PhD thesis, I had to be told time and again, I understand what you say, but that is in Indian English, not English English. Because English is not my first language, I speak something different in my home. But how do we understand that differentness within the Englishness? Is Indian English English? Might not be, but you are able to understand, right? Whatever I speak. So what I'm trying to say, there is so much prejudice that we have around our times, and in such a context, the call of the gospel is to see that we all live together, celebrate this justice for what God has granted to us. So on the next slide, the implications for our church today, on the next slide, we see church should be a site of hospitality. If justice has to flow down like a river, I wish and pray that church will be a site of hospitality for everyone. And for me, Eucharistic point where margins will become the Eucharistic point of understanding this hospitality. How do we understand it from the perspective of the margins? For people who are disempowered. How do we understand this gospel from their perspective? And how can we celebrate faith at the table of, in this post-truth age? Can our church be a table, an open table, where everyone can come together, celebrate, and sing for what God has given to us? In the book of Prophet Micah, what does the Lord require of you? The Lord requires us to do justice, to walk humbly, and to love mercy. I'm not sure if you are able to sing with me, but this is a small chorus that we have done. It's an easy chorus. You can join me. Once I sing, you can easily get us. What does the Lord require of you? Will God be pleased with your offering? No, no, no. But do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. Yeah? What does the Lord require of you? Will God be pleased with your burnt offering? No, 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 no. But do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God is all that required of you. But do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God is all that required of you. Yeah, on the next slide, it's easy. Now we sing together. Next slide, please. What does the Lord require of you? Love your God and your neighbor. Yes, 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 yes. To do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God is all that required of you. To do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God is all that required of you. That's the simple thing. What does the Lord require of you? But a big ask. So I just want to pause here because I have an activity. I want you to make a boat. Do you know to make a boat with a paper? Just as a reminder for us to say we are called to think of this boat. As I said, we started with rivers, boats, ships. And this boat should remind us that what is the Lord require of us is to walk humbly, love mercy, and to do justice. And allowing justice to flow like an ever-flowing stream. So I have a few papers there. If you are bold enough, and if you are adventurous enough, I'll show you how to make, this is a paper origami, and then you can take that with you, thinking that having come to Cliff, this boat reminds me that I need to strive for justice, because justice is the heart of the Christian gospel. Yeah? Can you please share those those sheets of paper there, please? Thank you. Can I have one? There's a color sheet as well if you want. It's a bit thick, but you can give it a try. Bianca, can you give me one? Let me show you. So this is a rectangle, but I want you to make this into a square. I'm sorry. So you got me? This is a square. So this is a rectangle. I want you to make this sheet into a square. Okay, you're with me? If you do this triangle and then you have a square, okay, this is a square. Just do it this way. It should look like this for you. Yeah, this is a square. Now fold this square into two rectangles. Yeah? Square into two rectangles. And now two rectangles into four squares. Got it? And then there are four sides. Pick one side of these four squares. Let me come again. Sorry. You have a square, big square. You made them into two rectangles. And then two rectangles become four squares. Yeah? Pick one side of the square, allowing three to be on the other side. Okay, fold this one side. So you have a square, two squares, and then fold one side of the square and three sides of the square the other end. Yeah? And then you open this triangle. From down, you open this triangle. You got it? Did you come to this triangle? You are in this square. One side of the square on one end and three sides of the square on the other end. Yeah, Shiny can also help. Yeah, yeah, you got it. And you get a triangle. And then when you make this triangle and you open it, you get a boat. Maybe you can help as well.
I'll give you back your mic.
Yeah, thanks. You got it? No? Sorry, I think I am. You got a boat? Yeah? Brilliant. No, this is to carry. You need to carry this with you as a reminder to say justice flows like a river. Well done. Thanks, Vicky. Good. So having done this one, on my next slide, before we can have some conversations. You see, this was one when George Floyd was killed, and this was one of the drawings of my son on a Trinity Sunday, kneeling, the Trinitarian God kneeling in support of George Floyd. Every knee shall bow. But this was trolled on my social media, trying to say, how can God kneel in front of humans? There were all kinds of conversations. So what does this image pick for you? What does this tell us in terms of our justice for our times today? God in the midst of a mess. Mm-hmm. God is lying down on the street with us. If God is kneeling down in the mess, like because he's weeping and he's struggling, so what does that tell us as a church? If we really want to take justice to be an ever-flowing stream, and I like the image of a river because it has this ecological sensitivity. It is an ever-flowing stream, and the streams come, the brooks, it goes on. So what does that tell us? So what do we want to do having been to this seminar today? What should we do as a church? I've given you context of migration on one hand, hunger on the other hand, racial discrimination on the other hand, refugees and asylum system and housing. There is so much patriarchy, discrimination in the name of sexuality and gender. So there is a whole range of things among which church today is placed. So I keep saying that there are three things that a church always do. One, they repeat always. Like because Jesus had a Seder, let me also plan to do a Seder for this Maundy Thursday. We just repeat. The second one, people try to reinterpret. Because Jesus had a Passover meal, but let me have the bread and wine. You with me? The third one where I want our churches to be is to reimagine. Because in every situation you see, Jesus did not do the Passover like what he did. He was respectful of his context and the need and the time, and therefore he reimagined and offered that newness, new thingy. Where is that newness that we are offering as a church? We are very good at repeating something, which is okay. We are okay in terms of reinterpreting, but maybe the push is towards a radical reimagining. Yeah.
I think there's an interesting dichotomy because there is a bit of me says actually we should stop doing food banks and we should hold the system accountable.
Yeah.
And Jesus held the leaders
Yeah.
at the time accountable for their behaviour and what was happening within the state.
Yeah.
And sometimes the act of goodwill, and it comes from a good place, gives people a get out of jail card free. And I think that's a dichotomy within our church.
No, it is.
We have to hold the two in tension because we have to feed the hungry.
Yeah. I mean, at the end, that's what the call of the gospel is. Yeah. No, but I think the point that has been raised is, in our Christian nurture, have we really inculcated this advocacy for justice as part of our Christian nurture? People are good for an all-night prayer, you need, fine. For example, a revival gathering, fine. But are we really there to advocate for justice and asking questions for accountability of our leaders? Is that part of our Christian nurture? And maybe I think it is important that we bring that onto our Christian nurture in terms of our protest, our dissent.
And in a way, that is not political parties, that's about the system that we have established. And
Yeah.
established in our church.
Yeah.
Well, because God put some there.
Yeah. So it's not about a political party, but it is about the system, is what. I mean, the word jubilee, as you understand, it is not about a personal change. It is a corporeal change. The whole jubilee, I really want everyone to read Leviticus 25 this Sunday in our churches, to understand jubilee is a Christian word grounded in our scriptures, and how do we reimagine jubilee for this weekend? And one proposal I was thinking is to write off the debt. It's a big ask, 16 billion. I'm not sure anybody will do it, but that is my wish, my dream. So how should we really celebrate Jubilee? And I'm really grateful for this Cliff Festival because they have named it Jubilee, inviting us to be grounded in our scripture, inviting us to reimagine Jubilee is about celebration. But what kind of celebration? When there is hunger, when there is discrimination, when there is a fear of stranger, when there is discrimination in the name of gender and sexuality around us, what does Jubilee means? What is this liberation that I want to write off, strive for? And perhaps maybe that will be a challenge for us this festival during this weekend. It is not about, we need celebrations. More than that, the Christian church should be at the forefront saying Jubilee is a space for us because it is a biblical mandate. And if Jesus, when he opened the scriptures of Luke chapter 4, that Nazareth manifesto, he said, I want to proclaim the year of the Lord, which has relations to the Jubilee year, the year of the Lord. Where is that favorable Lord, where the slaves are released, where the ecology is released, where everything, there is so much liberation being celebrated in terms of Jubilee. So if we can do that, our seminar and our festival is meaningful and purposeful. So I really wish and pray that God's strength will be with us. We will be the evangelists of justice for our times today, missionaries of justice for our times today, and try at least to make a difference in a small way. And every small way can make a huge difference across the nation. So on my final slide, I have this song called The Stranger, and which again we did few years ago. It's about on the road to Emmaus, when the risen Jesus Christ meets these two strangers, and how Jesus comes to them as a stranger, and the call for us is to resist xenophobia and things like that. We'll watch that video, The Stranger.
Explained our stories. The stranger walked and answered our queries. The stranger showed him in our sacred dairies. The stranger dispelled all of our worries. The risen Jesus comes to us a stranger, looking strange in this place and our nature. He calls us to know him in a stranger. Us with him holds our new future. darkness when we walked in sadness. The stranger spoke into our hopelessness. The stranger moved us despite our madness. The stranger included us in his gladness. The risen Jesus comes to us a stranger, looking strange in this place and our nature. He calls us to know him in a stranger. Us with him holds our new future. Agreed to come home with us. The stranger broke bread and shared it with us. The stranger blessed it and shared it for us. The stranger chased away all of our mistrusts. The risen Jesus comes to us a stranger, looking strange in this place and our nature. He calls us to know him in a stranger. Us with him holds our new future. The stranger disappeared from our own sight. The stranger burned in our hearts so bright. The stranger left to be in others and their plight. The stranger invites us to be salt and light. The risen Jesus comes to us a stranger, looking strange in this place and our nature. He calls us to know him in a stranger. Us with him holds our new future.
So on that note, thank you all for coming to this seminar on Let Justice Flow Down Like Rivers. Thank you very much. Please take your boat with you, please.